G'day folks, well here is the final situation at the end of this campaign game, Scenario 4 from Tinian, the Forgotten Battle. The Americans have cleared out the last remnants of Japanese defenders. A lot of the Imperial Naval Forces defending around Tinian Town and up in the hills up here. The way the Americans got this done was, as you can see, there's really just three formations around here. So 23rd Regiment, they rushed ahead down the road. We had the 8th Regiment, Yellow Band, from the 2nd Marine Division out on the western side, driving down this road, sort of in parallel. They both kind of converged on Tinian Town and attacked it from the east and the west simultaneously. One of the town hexes caught fire, which didn't do a great deal because the unit in there was all but eliminated by the time that hex caught fire. And yeah, they made very, very, very swift work of the Japanese defenders there. You can see they're still driving down the road here. By the time, I mean, these advanced elements started attacking, and I mean, they finished the Japanese off in Tinian Town before some of their sort of trailing units could make it down there. The same with the 23rd Regiment out here in the east. They finished off the southeastern hexes of Tinian Town before some of their infantry companies could even arrive, with their headquarters sort of trailing behind. Whilst these units sort of rushed ahead, they sort of used these roads to, as quick as they could, to use these roads to bypass Japanese defenders. They left, you can see over in the east, the 25th Regiment from the 4th Marine Division to take care of a few Japanese defenders around the caves here, whilst they sent the 24th Regiment Yellow Band to take Mount Lasso and a lot of Japanese defenders around here. Yeah, so they kind of cleaned up. What else? Okay, so the 2nd Regiment in the Blue Band, they also helped a little bit with some Japanese defenders around here before jumping on the road and heading south. You can see, if I pan to the north, some of these, this is the 6th Regiment with the Red Band from the 2nd Marine Division. They've landed on this day, the 26th. There was a bit of congestion on the landing beaches. The first time I had congestion, I really learnt lessons from earlier scenarios to clear these beaches as quickly as possible. Because my attention was drawn to the south of the island, I didn't realise there were some stacks here. And so there was a lot of congestion, which they've partially recovered from and have started to move to the south. But yeah, they've landed and they're like, oh, you guys have taken the island? Oh, okay, we'll just sort of relax around this area. And that's what they've been doing. So the Japanese had 20 victory points, 4 victory points for an event. 4 from that event, and there were 8 US company casualties, giving them 16 victory points for a total of 20. But because the island has been cleared before the 28th of July, the Americans subtract 20 victory points, giving the Japanese a final victory point tally of 0. Now, as that is 12 or less, this is a major American victory. So you can see here, each American unit, 2. There are no Japanese units on board in the game, and they cleared it before July 28th, a day before, in fact, 2 days before, in fact. This is a 3-day scenario. So how did the Americans get it all done so quickly? I don't know. How did the Japanese not manage to defend more effectively? I don't know. They were in trenches, they were in good terrain. I think the moment that broke the Japanese back was around here, Mount Marga. What happened was they had this very strong defensive line along here, but it was very much a line of units along the crest here. And when the 2nd Marine Division arrived and they came in along here and they hit kind of the pointy end of that line, and they basically focused on one Japanese unit at a time and kind of effectively rolled up that line. The Japanese were at their best defending when in fact they were counterattacking, and they were disorganising. They had a pretty strong solid line, which was disorganising any American unit that came close to that line. As soon as they began to lose just 1 or 2 units, the Americans would try to outflanking their position, swept sort of around here, pivoted around this hill, and then struck it from the west. And they were able to sort of outnumber and surround Japanese companies one at a time. I think that's how they got done. Certainly, weight of numbers. So when that yellow banded 8 regiment from the 2nd Marine Division arrived over here, they arrived and drove against the Japanese en masse, basically. So they were sort of getting 6, 7, 8 companies to attack a single Japanese company, and build up the disorganisation quite rapidly. And then they'd move on and do it again, and then move on and do it again, and move on. And, well, I mean, they didn't necessarily need to roll effectively. They didn't roll effectively because they didn't need to, because with stacks of companies, with support weapons and leaders, and with the concentrated fire that they were using, geez, they didn't need to roll too highly to inflict disorganisation, particularly with flamethrowers. If you get a flamethrower with a unit, they're super effective. That yellow fire modifier and the damage done on that high explosive, you can see here, you roll just a 2, and that's 2 disorganisation points. So 2 rolls of anything but a 1 gives you at least 2 disorganisation, which sends a stack up to maximum disorganisation, and they're often pinned by that stage, and then just 1 more hit and they're eliminated. And that's basically how the Americans cleared this area. The Japanese mounted a forward defence, so they brought all their sort of formations, battalions up from Tinian town to this defensive line. You may recall they had a strong position around here with some banded formations, and again down here. It was effective on the first day, in the first day and a half, really. But once the Americans inflicted a few casualties on the Japanese, and yes, they did suffer at the same time. I think, well, actually, once their reinforcements arrived and they overwhelmed the Japanese numerically, those formations were very, very rapidly destroyed at the second half of the second day on the 25th of July. So then this day, basically on this day, all the Americans had to do was sort of clean up those remnants and then drive south. I really didn't think they'd get this done. I thought this would head into a 4th day at least, but they drove down that road very quickly. I was using a lot of dispatch points whenever the the direct commands. Whenever the direct command came out, I was using a lot of direct command points for those most advanced units to send them against Tinian town. This came to, I should point out, it is the last daylight turn of the day, and both American divisions have 0 dispatch points left. So they were burning every dispatch point they had. They weren't trying to save it up. They're only on 3 fatigue, so I only used 3 division activations for each division, so 6 in total throughout the day. I didn't really abuse that too much. I didn't want to exhaust these poor guys. What else? Yeah, using direct commands for the most advanced units. I kind of, by midday, completely ignored these formations and these guys. So all the dispatch points were spent here on the quite strong 23rd Regiment and the quite strong 8th Regiment with the yellow band. And yeah, the 2nd Regiment with the blue band would have just arrived, I should point out. These guys really didn't do much, if anything, I don't think. I think they've just moved to Tinian town. I don't think they fired a shot. They just marched in, basically. Yeah. What could the Japanese have done differently? Certainly, I'll admit there were moments when I forgot about their artillery, and that is probably a super critical mistake. The Japanese really need their artillery to fire. I mean, I say that, maybe it was a couple of times, not a lot. And the Americans forgot about their artillery as well all the time. Because you so often my attention is so often focused on this close combat, kind of forgetting about these Japanese guns that are down here that have this massive range. They did fire a lot, I just often forgot about them. I should also point out, they don't often get the opportunity to fire. Because the Imperial Navy has such a terrible dispatch rating of 1, they really, I mean, these are the formations, the activation chips I'm using. The entire Imperial Naval, which uses 2 dispatch points, and the 56th NGF activation, which uses 1. So I was often using that to fire the guns. At the same time, I often needed to use this, which is costly, to activate a lot of the sort of smaller formation companies from the Imperial Navy. And I was often using this just to try to rally these units as much as possible. So I probably neglected that activation in place of this to try and mount a better sort of infantry defense. And by neglecting that, I'm neglecting the artillery, which can do a lot of damage to the Americans. Having said that, the last 24 hours, the Navy has been all but spent as a force. They're not... yeah, the Navy's good for artillery firepower. The Army is really good for their counterattacks. I should point out the Army counter. The Army sort of formations like this, the yellow, orange. So yeah, that is the end of the campaign. It ends in a major American victory. And a lot to think about. Americans made some mistakes on the first day. They rushed ahead too far. The Japanese maybe made some mistakes on the second day. Maybe they should have conserved their formations a little bit better, or mounted a stronger counterattack, or maintained momentum with that counterattack. In any case, once their forward defence collapsed around Mount Lasso, Mount Marga, the third day was a bit of a cakewalk for the Americans. So yeah, that is the campaign game from Tinian, The Forgotten Battle, part of the company scale system.